Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Risk to Resilience, building a stable foundation for your data. I'm Michelle Clifton, and I'll be your moderator today. So when watching the news, especially in ed tech, we are in a world of constant technology change, and data is your university's most valuable asset. But how do you ensure that your data is flexible, accurate, and ready to move should you need it or should your foundations change? So that's what we're here to discuss today. Please welcome our solution architect and data expert, Vily Dardanes. Vily, you have worked with countless universities to untangle complex data problems. Will you please share a little bit about your background with our viewers?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Vily Dardanes. I am the solution architect in data services here at The Groove. I've been working on data lakes and data warehouses for the past 25 years.
And that's why we have him here today, because if we have a question about data, Vily will be able to answer it. So, Vily, let's start with a broad question just to get started. What is the single biggest challenge that you see on campuses today related to their data?
Thanks, Michelle. The biggest issue we see is a lack of data readiness. Many institutions' core data is so tied to their legacy systems that when a platform change is needed, it becomes a nightmare. They risk losing critical student and operational metrics, which can readily and directly impact everything from student retention to financial reporting. At The Groove, we focus on creating a stable data foundation. We believe your institutional data strategy should be decoupled from a technology stack. Our goal is to make sure your core institutional data is flexible enough to move, integrate, and be leveraged for accurate decision making no matter what software and platform you're using.
And that was something important I wanted to draw attention to today, Lily, is that the Groove, we're solution agnostic. So we're able to look at that data layer and go from there. So let's jump into the why. Why is data readiness more critical now than ever before?
So the stakes are high, Michelle. Student success and retention rely on accurate, timely data. And any broken pipeline creates a fundamental and operational risk by disrupting insights, retention alerts, and accurate count of student population. When systems fail or are interrupted, institutions fly blind, unable to identify and support struggling students and or faculty members.
Completely agree. And I've been an administrator on three campuses, and over the years we would have those last minute questions, Billy, and we needed data, and it seemed to be impossible to get that information quickly. So if I'm a business user, an administrator, maybe an academics, and I need minute by minute decisions with data, how we see it is there is this ocean of information, but we just need a teacup of data to make that decision. So that's what gets us to knock on your door. What is the first thing a campus needs to do when looking at their data structure if they want to be able to get to that information more quickly? So now let's start with the structure of what advice do you have for campuses on how to get started?
Thanks, Michelle. So I would say the first thing to start would be with data governance. All right.
Yep.
So if you look at the screen here, we see data that's fragmented. We have data storage costs. We have a lack of real-time capabilities. We have a lack of AI functionality like predictive and prescriptive type modeling. And we have old legacy systems that are hanging around. So establishing a data governance environment is first and foremost. So the difference between setting up a data governance and setting up data management goes like this. So data governance ensures data quality, security, privacy, and accessibility of your data. So that's in combination with IT and the business side together, working to create this strategy. Right? And data management is the outcome of that data governance gets passed down to data management. Data management get established in the environment to do all the operational execution of these rules. So, in summary, data governance provides a strategic direction, and data management provides the operational capability to achieve the data governance goals.
So let me ask this, is data governance IT's job or who else is involved?
It's both the business and IT. So
Okay.
together in collaboration, right, they come up with a data governance board, which is made up of the business side and IT side, which comes up with the data requirements, the policies, and how to put all that stuff together so the data management team can take that and run with it.
Yeah, and I love this slide because for those of you listening to this presentation, when we were in preparation, it became a lot of learning opportunity for me to talk to Vily about, well, what's this and what's that? Well, he had a couple of terms I wasn't familiar with. So we looked at the descriptive to predictive to prescriptive. Did I get that right? Descriptive
Yes.
to predictive then to prescriptive. Can you walk us through that, Vily? What do you mean with those
Sure.
different three stages? Explain those buckets of data.
So you have a problem, right? Let's say
Okay.
something comes up and you can describe it, right? So you describe that problem and then you try to predict it so it does not happen again, right?
Right.
And to do that, now you've described the problem, you've put a prediction process in place to handle it. Now you have to prescribe that thing so it does not happen over and over and over again, right? So you take that predictive process and you add a prescriptive remedy on top of that so it does not happen again. So those kind of three go hand in hand.
Okay. So if once we figure out why we're losing students for retention, then we go in place and put a workflow or something in place to prevent that from occurring. So
Correct.
whatever that problem is, same thing maybe at a doctor's office. I break my leg, they're going to put a cast on it, but let's not break the leg again. So maybe not roller skating.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway, I get it. So we want that data tells us what happened, then we can start preventing those problems from even occurring. I love that.
right. So
Now we talked a lot about legacy data and how big data gets, that glut. And you had mentioned to me a term that I hadn't heard or played around with, but I'm familiar with the tech debt, and we start tracking all this data, but cold data. Let's
mm,
talk through that for a minute. When
absolutely.
schools have been using the same student information system for 40 years, and somebody 40 years ago started tracking data, what happens over the decades with your data?
So first, we start with here's your data source, right? You get a data source, you've got a bunch of fields in it. The business really only needs, let's say, a few of those fields, but the majority of those fields are still coming in no matter what. So nobody's actually gone and cleaned it. So over the years, it just keeps growing. You're only using, for example, let's say there's 100 fields coming in from the data source, and you only need 20 of them. So the other 80 just keep growing and growing and growing. That's cold data, right? It's not being used, it's collecting dust, and it's cold, right? So the other 20 fields are hot data, right? That data is being used by the business to solve problems. So that's how we distinguish. So cleaning that up is a process, right? So because now it's
Right.
going over the, like you just, in your example, 40 years, you got 40 years of cold data. So now that storage is just ballooned and nobody really wants to put it out because they don't know, they're afraid maybe they might delete something that somebody else might need. So again, there's where the data governance, right, and data management comes in play.
It all comes back to that data governance when you decide what you need,
Right.
track and measure that. So if I'm a business user and I look at my dashboards, I want to make sure what I'm seeing in my dashboard actually represents the business problem I'm trying to solve.
Absolutely.
Is it safe to say, Vily, that if we've been tracking all of this data, this cold data for decades,
Hmm.
colleges and universities are paying for data storage that they don't need? Could they reduce tech debt by starting a data management process and reduce the amount of data they're storing? Could we save money?
Absolutely. the process starts at the beginning, right? So identifying those data elements I described earlier, right? And taking the cold data, right, out of the picture, removing that and removing the historical collection of all of it. So it'll be one big blob of cold data that you can just eliminate, right? Or put
I
it
love
somewhere, out in the cold somewhere.
yard.
Yeah.
I love hearing ways we can really evaluate and reduce tech debt because costs are going up for colleges and universities. And now we are in the middle of this new tectonic shift of AI and everything else. But those ongoing costs don't go away. You've just proposed there is a way to reduce that ongoing cost for data you're not using. And I will share with you, Vily, I was at a previous institution a decade ago, and I noticed we had all of these filing cabinets, filing cabinets, filing cabinets. Well, we were using document imaging and gonna go paperless. Well, I realized that they had not reviewed their retention policy in a while, and they were saving documents longer than the retention policy. So just from a tactical piece of advice for those listening on this call, if you are in student services, academics, provost office, any of those areas, figure out what your state retention, document retention policy is and what your school retention policy is. Reconcile those. There are certain documents you don't need to save for 20 years. They just have a 1 year retention policy. So that's only data you need to track for a year. Then there's other data, completed transcript that gets saved for infinity. But figure out what your data retention strategy is. Do that first. And then when you get to data governance, you're showing up with real fact and policy, not ghost stories. Oh, we're supposed to save this 70 years. Are we? We were able to get rid of a lot of documents and then store others that no longer really had any business being in our filing cabinet. So we had a fun time. I said, let's have a funeral for these filing cabinets. We all wore black as we had them hauled out. It was quite fun. Probably the other departments thought we were a little odd by doing that, but we wanted to celebrate that we were reducing that paper. So if you can use that visual example of what is happening in your data storage, just imagine all of this data out there being stored that you do not need. So take that to your data governance and then have the conversation around what do I really need day to day to make decisions. Billy, another thing that's changed in higher education is we used to measure retention, graduation rate, live by those. Now we measure persistence, career success, social mobility. There are all of these other data elements we want to use because they equate success. So because the definition of success is changing and it goes based on the campus's identity, I feel like every school that doesn't reevaluate its policies and uncouple that from your student information implementation. So your student information system, you may have implemented it 20 years ago. A lot of times people track data because that was the limitation of their system. If you've changed systems, uncouple what you're saving from the database decisions to what is the identity on your campus. And I think that brings us to this slide. Um, this is a major undertaking. I can feel a little overwhelmed by it, but you're giving us some good rules of engagement. What is the first step a university needs to do if they say, yes, we've been sitting with old data too long, let's embark on a new process? What's the first step we need to do, Billy?
Thanks, Michelle. So the first step I would take is a data readiness assessment, right? So how
Okay.
mature is your data, right? Where's it
Right.
coming from? Where is it going? What
Yep.
steps along the way are getting transformed? So you have a data ecosystem, so to speak, in the environment, right? Data comes in from the data source and ends up in somebody's report or dashboard. But in between there, there's business logic that gets applied, which transforms that data into what the business needs, right? So finding out, getting a lay of that data ecosystem and finding the data sources, making sure that all those data elements are being used along the way and finding out what business logic transforms that data and how it's being used in the end is the data readiness assessment piece that should start day one.
Okay. What's the outcome of an assessment? If somebody does our assessment with the group, what do they get? What's their tangible asset?
So they will get a document pretty much describing that data flow in the environment
Okay.
from left to right, meaning the data sources on the left to the end user on the right, and all the business logic in between. So if I had a data source coming in from one spot and it gets transformed along the way, meaning business logic gets applied, and at the very end I have a dashboard, I have to make sure that the data that's coming from the data source and that business logic that's been identified by the business is perfectly being done, that at the end result on my dashboard every morning, I get to see the exact result I'm looking for. So that flow and that document will be there and describing here's what you have today, here's your gaps, right? So kind of a gap analysis along the way is also included in that.
Okay. That's great. I always think about it's concerning to me if I'm making decisions on a daily basis and I am using the wrong data to make those decisions. It's like trying to put a Band-Aid on something that I can't heal that. I'm looking at the wrong answers, and so then I can't know what the question is. That's why I think this readiness assessment is just that good first step of let's lay our cards on the table and see where we are. Now I know we're almost out of time. We wanted to keep this short and but give some next steps. So what I'm hearing from this conversation, Vily, is first, data readiness is not a future problem, it's a now problem. So it's critical for student success, operational efficiency, and really being positioned to move forward with AI and integrate that into how our campuses operate. Second, your data foundation is the most important part of any tech strategy, and we need to decouple that from your SIS or decisions you made 30 years ago. Those may not still be the right marching orders for today. And third, you do not have to do this alone. I'm hearing you have a few things that you can offer that can get universities and colleges started on this. So tell me a little bit about what's on this slide. If somebody were to call today and say, we want to get started, what's step one, two, and three?
So the first thing, thanks, Michelle. So the first thing that we would do is identify the environment, right? So coming in and taking a look at what's there today, right? And so it's almost like if you think about it, we're going to be pouring the cement in your foundation. As the house gets built, you have a foundation of data that's accurate and timely, right? So we will come through there first, making sure that that foundation we're pouring, that's already there. First of all, that's already there meets the requirements that you're looking for on the business side. So we lay out a document that says, here's all the data sources, data elements, all the business logic that's being applied, right? And who's using it, where is it being used, and how is it being how is it affecting the business side of things as it's flowing through. So you'll get a data map that flows left to right again, and also every element in between. That's that's the output that's going to come out of the data assessment.
And I think it's good for, and many campuses do this, and I've sat on lots of, I was a business user, but we had a regular cadence of meetings with IT. Unfortunately, all too often the conversation was centered around, oh, there's a patch in the system of some kind of something, just test it to make sure we didn't break it. This is a more strategic conversation I'm hearing with the business users to when they're doing the joint planning with IT to really talk about what is the data, what do I need to do with this data? So it's
Yep.
probably a good exercise for a campus to go through as well.
So,
All
so if I
right.
can add one, so if I can add one more
Sure.
thing there, Michelle. So the other thing we want to do is we want to identify day one that business and IT governance body, right? So
Yes.
you want to definitely identify that body up front, right? Who's going to be involved here all along the way. That may be even step zero to get there before you even get to step one. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking with step zero. figure out what your retention policies are so that when we go in and say you're really paying for all this data you've never touched and don't need, it's ice cold. Let's get it out. So that
Right.
is a couple of things people can do on their own before reaching out. Well, Vily, thank you so much. I want to thank you for all of your insights. This was an excellent conversation. Everyone watching, I think the next step is clear. Take control of your data. We've made it easy for you to get started. Please visit thegroove.io to learn more about our assessments or to schedule a conversation with a member of our team like Vily. And we have others that are just fantastic with this conversation. And don't forget to sign up and watch more of our on demand. We have lots of topics in different areas, so please watch those. And thank you so much for joining us today.